Okay, are you ready? Handa na ba kayo? Are you ready to go out and vote? I do hope you are, and I do hope you have wise choices. You prepared the list because today, October 30, 2023, is Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections all over the country. After such a long wait and a series of postponements, the elections are on and they will go on through the day, and we do hope that they actually bring change. Napansin naman po natin that in many places, the tarpaulins, the names, faces of candidates reflect the much younger generation. Many of the older batch of politicians have either graduated to the mayor, to the higher positions, or have retired from politics after COVID. So we will monitor that today and find out what's going on as far as the local elections is concerned. And in the meantime, I just want to remind you, it's October 30, 2023. It's a Monday, and we are going to be covering some polling places for the duration of the day here on One News. Now, let's get on with the program. And I chose today's Daily Starter not just as an encouragement, but maybe something you can bring with you or read before you vote. Because if you choose someone, it might be good to choose someone who represents these particular things that money can't buy. Gab, if you would, please post things money can't buy. Kahit nabibili yung boto, you cannot buy manners. You either have manners, a person has manners, morals, respect, character, common sense, trust, patience, class, integrity, and love. Kung pipili po kayo, if you're going to choose a candidate for barangay captain and barangay officials, then find people who have manners, morals, who respect other people, even those in the opposition or against their own group, character, who will not cheat, lie, or steal, common sense, because it may be common, but it may be called common, but many people don't have common sense. And of course, mapapagtiwalaan ba ninyo? Are they patient enough not to cheat, lie, and do they have class? Yung class, sabi nga kahit anong gawin mo, kung ang tao pinanganak na walang class, talagang walang class. Integrity and love. So that's our daily starter. Let's now go to our front page of the Philippine Star, October 30, 2023. We'll just do a scan because, like I said, we have two guests. We have a couple of reporters, journalists giving us feedback, and it's a busy day for everyone. So the front page today, time to vote. All systems go for Barangay Sangguniang Kabataan elections. According to the COMELEC, they have everything ready and everything is under control. Meanwhile, Israel enters second stage of war versus Hamas in Gaza. Pinasok na po ng Israel yung northern Gaza, and they are now going house to house, door to door in their campaign. Meanwhile, bigger transport strike set ahead of PUJ phase out. Transport Group Manibela yesterday said it's preparing a bigger strike to oppose the December 31 deadline on the phase out of the traditional jeepney. You have been given more than enough time. Many postponements, kayo naman kaya ang sumunod. Meanwhile, Quezon City named most business-friendly LGU in NCR. Excuse me. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry has named Quezon City as the most business-friendly local government unit in the National Capital Region. Okay. And then as far as the elections go, Too many poll watchers, a sign of vote buying, according to DILG Chief Secretary Benhar Abalos. And below that, 6 other Philippine-China projects delayed Senate reviewing deals. Okay, meron pong 6 pa. There are 6 more infrastructure projects that have been delayed, and there is now a move to pull out of those arrangements and go with the Japanese banks. Meanwhile, Friends star Matthew Perry dies at 54. If you are a fan of that long-running sitcom, Friends, Matthew Perry has passed away at the age of 54. Dangerous sea actions. Blinken raises U.S. concern with Chinese counterpart. Yan pong photo na yan, you see a fishing boat, a bangka, Philippine bangka passing in front of the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier anchored in Manila Bay. And that's about all the news we have for today in the front page of the Philippine Star. Let's now go for, I have to check, are we going to go for a quick break, Gab, or are we going to go straight to our video? Okay, I think it's safe to assume we're going to go for a break. Okay, let's go for a break, and when we return, we start our conversations today, discussion regarding, excuse me, barangay elections here on Agenda.
$245 candidates in the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections are the subjects of orders of suspension of proclamation. Latest data released by the COMELEC showed that 5 candidates engaged in vote buying, 173 in premature campaigning, and 37 cases were referred for possible administrative cancellation. Meanwhile, 30 cases have motions for reconsideration, where 21 are facing disqualification cases, 5 have nuisance candidates, and 4 have denial of due course or cancellation of certificates of candidacy. So what exactly happens if the candidate with a pending case before the COMELEC wins the elections? Under Section 600 of COMELEC Resolution 10924, the COMELEC Division or en banc has the authority to suspend the proclamation of a winning candidate if an unresolved petition has strong evidence. Meanwhile, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian has emphasized the need for a national organization dedicated to enhancing the role of Sangguniang Kabataan leaders in nation building. Gatchalian filed a bill in 2022 seeking to amend Section 21 of the SK Reform Act of 2015. Under the proposed measure, The Nasyonal na Federasyon ng mga Sangguniang Kabataan will be established and composed of the elected presidents of the regional SK federations. Let's discuss this and the importance of the BSKE on today's agenda.
Professor Hansley Juliano is a lecturer at the Political Science Department of the Ateneo de Manila University. Juliano is a D1 doctoral candidate under the Graduate School of International Development at Nagoya University. Aside from this, he is also a research officer at the Sentro ng mga Nagkakaisa at Progresibong Manggagawa. Eric Daniel de Torres is an associate professor at the University of the East Department of Political Science. De Torres was previously part of the consultative committee that focused on constitutional amendments during the Duterte administration.
Good morning, Professors Juliano and De Torres. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Handa na ba kayo?
Opo, magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Good morning, Cito.
Magandang umaga po.
Okay, we're going to be talking about the barangay elections primarily and of course the SK. And I'd like to get your assessment, okay? A lot of people have expressed this sentiment. Grabe. My God, what's happening in these barangay elections? There is so much violence. There are more people killed in this election than at any other time. What are your reactions to this? I'd start with you, Professor Juliano.
Yeah, sorry about that. When it comes to violence po kasi, it usually starts with this simple question. How many resources are we fighting over? Political violence, especially in the Philippines, is usually triggered by competition over valuable resources. Din naman talaga. So when it is quite interesting that in contrast to previous decades where this level of violence is happening in the municipal level, in the city level, in the provincial level, it is definitely worrying if we're getting reports that it's beginning to get violent in this level as well. But I guess this is a bit to be expected considering there have been multiple delays na rin of elections over the past years. So there's a greater pressure, I guess, on the political patronage networks of competing political actors to either keep it or get it. That greater incentive does tend to fuel more intense polarization, and that can translate to violence. No? Let's start with that po muna. Thank you.
Okay, how about you, Eric? What's your view on all of this violence? Because, in fact, in Abra, for instance, one candidate was killed, and the rest of the candidates decided, ayaw na namin. We don't want to get killed.
Well, I would agree with Professor Hansley. It's because of primarily the delay. That's the first key consideration. They have felt and basically experienced the capacity to be able to look at their position as a avenue for them to be able to advance their interests and pursue whatever personalistic approaches that they have basically in their respective turf. Secondly, this is actually a test case for these barangay officials because they have a patron, so to speak, in terms of being able to get hold of several bailiwicks in their respective areas. So this is a test case for the 2025 elections, for the midterm elections, especially for those who will be running at the local level. We're talking about, of course, higher positions from the governor down to the mayor, vice mayor, to the councilor. So this is something that is each and every local government official is actually looking at such in terms of how their allies, especially at the barangay, would be able to keep their positions as they are deemed considered to be political coordinators or political operators of these local government officials.
So does that mean, Professor Eric, that if we are having the elections now and there is a substantial change in the personalities who are running the barangays, does that mean that the congressional, senatorial, presidential election, gubernatorial elections are going to be radically affected and is also going to become very expensive?
Yes, actually, Sito, the for the past election, the 2022 elections, it has become very expensive already. If you're a candidate, okay, we look at basically these barangay officials as political power brokers of the people at the community level. To the patron going identifying key government officials or positions for that matter. And this drastic change is just going to being able to align themselves into whoever it is going to support them, especially at this particular elections. And this is you're correct, it's going to be a very expensive, and we're looking at a more expensive 2025 elections for that matter.
Hansley, do you agree that it's going to change the national elections, provincial elections, or regional elections for that matter?
Mm, I'm inclined to see this development as simply adding on to established patterns of campaigning. Uh, in previous decades, the previous assumption was the transition towards digital or more social media oriented campaigning would cut costs. But as was demonstrated last year in 2022, no, it actually drove it up because the social media campaigning, the disinformation network also relied on a significant amount of money going around. I've had testimonies from friends in civil society in 2022 that uh, GCash payments were going around practically the entire election campaign season. And because it's GCash, there's no regulation on that. That's a newer form of vote buying that has not been properly addressed, and we don't expect it to be addressed by our current crop of politicians because they're the ones doing it. No, so now in the research I was engaged with the university in the past, we did notice that violence really only sparks up when there's a sizable opposition in the area. But if there's none, like say for example, in one of my home provinces in Cavite, I've been given intelligence by friends and residents in the area that there's already an emerging consensus that this will be the set of candidates that will be running, and therefore let's not field any more opposition so that there's no more tension in 2025. Now the barangay elections is a test case for that because I think it's not unreasonable to assume that the barangay leaders that emerge and the political machineries that emerge during the barangay election are directly tied to the local campaign mechanisms of the local political dynasties and competing actors. So the barangay elections, by virtue of this, becomes the how do you call this, the initial scouts of the campaign, so to say.
Teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kumbaga sa pelikula, ito yung teaser natin on what is to happen in 2025. But if you're right on that one, Hansley, then does that mean that the 2025 elections is going to be even more bloody or will be bloodier?
I think only insofar as we establish that there are competing political actors or political families in a locality. The difficulty of studying, or and for that matter handing down a uniform verdict on local politics in the Philippines is that it's a bit impossible unless you are very familiar with the local dynamics. Yes, we do have the common patterns of clientelism, patron-client, attempts at resistance based on civil society or church-based organizing, all that kind of stuff. But it's ultimately dependent on the particulars of and the relationships of the political families in the area. Is there the expectation that they are friends right now, or they are trying to unite against an upstart, so to say? And subsequently, when the upstart has been defeated, are they gonna keep that alliance or will they split and therefore polarize the next campaign period?
Yeah.
It does require some level of diligence, reportage, and I guess also political education on the local level for people to make clear decisions on whether this political election is going to be a bit more contentious and can it go violent than the next time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we do have track record that there are some provinces are more inclined to be more violent than others.
Yeah, that's more of a family history, culture in the context kasi katulad yan do sa father ko that in the province of Nueva Ecija, historically the elections were bloody in the past, in the 70s, 80s, but I don't know how it is now. But Eric, how has digitalization and the fact that we have a much younger group of candidates and voters coming into the process, nagbabago ba or same old na naman?
Actually, Sito, same old. Eh. That's why beyond digitalization, they shifted basically in terms of their approach. But in the locality, especially we talk about the barangay elections, everything is personal. So makikita mo diyan talagang yung binobotong kapitan tsaka kagawad, SK, kamag-anak rin din talaga. Although binago na as per amendment ng batas ng SK, yun yung isang magandang testimony na it can be done, political dynasty can be toppled down because of this amendment, but it still continue to perpetuate. That's why this is the greatest challenge to our lawmakers. We want to make significant law. For me, radically, okay, let us, the question of abolishing the barangay and the SK is definitely out of the question. But for me, my take on this is that we should definitely reform our barangay system in the country. For example, we have witnessed basically the competency of our barangay officials during the pandemic and as well as our local government officials, right? And this is a good
Okay.
opportunity for each and every one of us for us to be able to choose competent barangay officials for that matter. That is why also my take on this is that in terms of being able to reform our barangay system is number one, to look at not
Okay.
only yeah.
Eric, hold that thought. Okay, hold that
Okay.
thought. Kasi that's going to be a big chunk of our conversation today regarding reforms. Okay, but first let's go for a quick break. When we return, we will talk about how do we change the setup or introduce reforms into this increasingly violent, corrupted system in our barangays, which is essentially our neighborhoods. Okay, we'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to your program agenda. And today we are going to have the barangay elections, SK elections after so many years. And a very interesting area is the Sembo, Pembo, that area that Taguig and Makati had been fighting over. And now they're going to have their elections. So let's get the latest on the ground. We have mobile journalist Julie Baiza reporting to us live from Pembo Elementary School in Taguig. Julie, good morning.
Good morning, Cito. Nandito nga tayo ngayon sa Pembo Elementary School kung saan 7 a.m. nagsimula yung botohan. Higit 36,000 registered voters yung inaasahang boboto dito sa Pembo. Kaya lang hanggang sa kasalukuyan, may ilang mga problema, may mga naghahanap ng kanilang polling precincts. Kanina may nakausap tayo na nakapila siya sa help desk. Ang sabi niya, hindi raw kasi siya nakatanggap ng sulat from COMELEC nung bagong polling precinct niya. Ngayong nailipat na sila under Taguig City. So hindi niya rin alam kung saan siya pupunta at paano siya boboto ngayon. Kung maalala kasi natin, marami yung nalipat nga ng polling precincts nang maisaila lalim sa Taguig City itong 10 Embo barangays. Bukod dyan, problema rin ng iba ngayon yung kanilang doon sila bumoboto or same polling precinct. Ang sabi nga nung isa dati, kaming magkakapamilya na nasa iisang polling precinct pero ngayon magkakahiwalay, nagkalayo-layo. Kaya yun yung medyo nag-create ng confusion sa mga tao ngayon. Kaya yung nagtatayo ng help desk dito, yung eskwelahan kung saan tumutulong sila sa mga naghahanap ng polling precincts, ng room assignments. Pero bukod doon sa problema, sa ngayon, payapa, peaceful naman yung paligid, yung itong school premises. Ito lang din kasi yung nag-iisang eskwelahan na ginagamit for the BSKE elections. Bukod sa Taguig PNP, nandito nakabantay din yung Makati Police and may augmentation din from the NCRPO at saka sa headquarters sa West Rame. Meron din tayong mga taga-POSO o yung Public Order and Safety Office na nakabantay. Sito?
Okay, sa ngayon ba, Julie, mukhang tuloy-tuloy naman ang magiging election or meron bang ugong-ugong dyan na baka biglang may magpro-protesta na ibalik nyo kami sa nanay namin?
Actually sa ngayon, tuloy-tuloy naman, smooth naman yung nagiging flow except doon sa mga nawawalangang polling precinct na maraming naiinis kasi napakabilis nga daw ng pagbabago at hindi naging ganun ka-smooth for them. Pero just to be objective lang, meron din namang iba na mga nalipat ng polling precinct at sabi nila, despite nga na nabago yung room assignment, mabilis naman daw sila na nakaboto.
Okay, last question, Julie. Any reports of flying voters, unregistered voters, or mga illegal ba?
Sorry, what's the question again?
What about flying voters?
Sa ngayon, wala pa tayong nakakausap na or nagiging problema ngayon mga alingas-ngas. Kasi kanina pinupuntahan natin yung magkaibang partido, yung mga naglalaban-laban dito. Kumusta? Kung meron ba silang mga namomonitor? Kasi hawak nila yung may mga listahan din sila ng mga tao. So ang sabi nila sa ngayon naman, kahit na medyo nagkakagulo sa polling precinct at saka sa mga room assignments, hindi pa namomonitor yung pagkakaroon ng mga flying voters o yung mga nabubuhay na ng mga botante.
Okay. Well, Julie, thank you very much for your report this morning. Ingat ka. Bagamat maayos naman ang eleksyon dyan, mabuti na yung nag-iingat. Thank you very much. Okay, and that's Julie Baiza reporting from Pembo in Taguig. Di ko na malaman Hansley tsaka Eric. Di ko na malaman kung sasabihin kong Taguig o Makati. Anyway, gentlemen, let's go back to our conversation. Before the break, Eric, you were talking about reforms. Now, I wrote a column where I pointed out that much of the violence is probably associated with the fact that barangays have become a huge commercial undertaking. I found out just towards the weekend that some barangay officials, not even barangay captains, but lower than barangay captains, in some places earn as much as 33,000 a month. Aba, mas malaki pa kinita nila sa mga may MBA. So what are your reactions to that?
Yeah. Tama kayo dyan, Cito. Number one, that would depend on the amount of the budget of the local government unit kasi may trickle-down effect yan pagdating sa ating mga barangay. In terms dun sa reform that I was actually talking about is that perhaps the government must, rethink the functions basically of the barangay. Halimbawa, pag titignan natin yung trabaho ng mga kagawad, and let us be, serious about it, meron ba talagang legislative output ang mga kagawad natin? Because the kagawads are basically the small representation of the council, the provincial as well as the Sangguniang council and the municipal council for that matter. So ano yung ginagawa nilang legislation sa barangay na hindi na covered ng munisipyo, syudad at saka ng probinsya? So nag-e-end up kung titignan natin yung functions ng ating mga kagawad na nagiging katulong ng kapitan, we're actually performing executive function and not a legislative function for that matter. So administratively, may mga pwedeng usapan o pwedeng maging laruin natin na proposal na kailangan pa ba natin ng mga barangay kagawad pagdating sa halalan o baka mas kailangan natin na additional administrative functions. Secondly, kung titignan natin, pag pumunta ka sa DILG at saka sa Sandigan Bayan, ang daming kaso ng accountability issues ng ating mga barangay secretaries. Walang accountability yung mga barangay secretaries kasi lahat nagpe-prepara kalimitan yung mga barangay secretaries natin. So baka tignan natin ito sa aspektong administratibo at baka makita natin instead of mas magastos, baka instead mas maka-rationalize tayo ng pondo sa pagpapasahod at saka pagpapasweldo ng pagbibigay ng honorarium dito sa ating mga barangay officials for that matter.
Okay, Professor Hansley, ito bang barangay, this concept of barangay, officials, barangays, halls, etc. I mean, is this genuinely a Philippine creation? Or is this something that is actually present in other countries? And what is the difference when you compare a barangay from a similar unit outside of the Philippines, in Asia or in Europe?
Okay po. I can clearly speak po for living 3 years in Nagoya City in Japan now. The closest equivalent they have, which is the local unit below the city, is what we would call a ward. So every city has multiple ward offices. Every city in Japan has multiple ward offices. But those ward offices are not elective offices. Those ward offices are a collection essentially of local functions that serve the city government. And while it is run by local government officials, those are not elective, those are appointive. Those are essentially civil servants that provide weekly services. Sometimes even during holidays they're open, so you can get your birth certificate, your residence certificate, you can get registration for online services so that the city government can give you all the help you need. So there's that small more direct office that provides basic services to regular citizens, but the overall administrative function is already deposited in the city government. So that's the function of the mayor.
So as far as barangays or the concept of a barangay is concerned, not just a village, it's village all over the world, merong mga village. But as a political unit, it does not exist the same way it does in the Philippines abroad?
I don't think so po, because the way I understand it, we established the barangay as a send up to the pre-colonial system of governance that we have, and the assumption is that it is essentially a collection of families and neighborhoods. But when you try to look at it from the perspective of governmental efficiency, as demonstrated by Sir Eric, there's already a significant amount of overlapping and even redundant functions.
Okay.
And so clearly there is a question of, so if the barangay captain is already doing executive functions, why are they also doing executive functions? If
Okay, Eric, may I ask you, Eric, are we getting our money's worth from barangays? Because, a lot of money is going to go to LGUs, especially
Yeah.
after the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas rule.
Yeah.
Now, that includes barangays and SKs, but
Yes.
you have to wonder, ano ba talaga ang nakukuha natin, and do we need these people there? Because as you pointed out, the councilors, okay, they will legislate maybe a ordinance, but that's only for the barangay. It doesn't apply to the next barangay.
So money's worth. I think that's what I mentioned a while ago, that we have to reevaluate basically the overall function of the barangay. Secondly, we talk about budget. Budget is a number one challenge with regard to our barangay, simply because the budget of every barangay varies. For example, you cannot compare the budget of a particular barangay in Makati compared to basically a 5th class, 6th class municipality. There is a particular barangay or several barangays in Makati that has basically more budget as compared to a 5th class, 6th class municipality. Second is, how do we, for example, monitor the type and the kind of programs that they basically create in their respective barangays? So it's not just the barangay thing, but also another issue would be your SK. Time and again, parang may nagbago ba? Liga dito, liga doon, and at the same time, nadagdagan ngayon, since digital na, Mobile Legends naman yung karagdagan nilang mga programs or projects. So again, we cannot help but to wonder what kind of quality. They are essential, but how do we intend to capacitate these barangay officials, and at the same time ensure that their programs and projects are actually at utmost quality, providing delivery of services to the community for that matter?
Yeah, no, to the point that I made regarding the commercialization, quote unquote, of barangay operations. Parang like I know of a particular barangay in the Ortigas, Mandaluyong area, in Pasig. May mga barangay dyan, or in Makati, na as you pointed out, make so much money from businesses because they have a concentration of businesses in their area. But that also means that there's a lot of money to fight over. Hansley, what's your, is it possible na to pare down o bawasan or reduce the transactional aspect of barangay? Because I remember when all of this barangay started many, many years ago, I'm revealing my age, beautification project lang naman yan, security, you had tanods going around, and then, fixing fiestas. It was more of, what the community and social life was all about. Now it's there's commerce, there is politics, they're even into peace and order. They're also doing ambulances. Sabi ko, kailan pa naging trabaho ng barangay? I mean, okay, so you have primary healthcare, but some barangays have like 3 or 4 ambulances.
Well, I'm inclined to think that much of the effort of the barangays of the barangays in upgrading their functional responsibilities, also their sense of trying to justify their existence. As you mentioned in the past, in previous decades, we only assumed them as dealing with community concerns. But because of the changing nature of Philippine society and the Philippine economy, it's a bit difficult now to really say what is the community for regular Filipinos. Like let me demonstrate my own personal situation. I live here in Bulacan province right now. But my job as faculty is based in Quezon City. So I am more inclined to care about what is happening in Quezon City because what happens in Quezon City will affect my job and my
Mm.
and my salary than whatever is happening here in Bulacan. So this kind of internal migration that is being experienced by a lot of regular Filipinos than myself is defining this schizophrenia, I would say, of barangays because they don't know who their constituencies are anymore. They're kind of pressured to be basically the source of all services. And because they are pressured to provide as many services as they could, then the office becomes more politically and financially charged. Because if they don't provide those services, it's a bit difficult for them to justify to the population. So why should we care? Why should we vote, right? If we're not
Mhm.
getting anything from you. It's clientelistic, sure, but as has been pointed out by global political science, clientelism is the crudest form of democratic accountability because there is an exchange, there is accountability happening, even if it's strictly speaking not animated by higher principles, so to say.
Yeah, Eric, you were saying you were talking about the disparity between rich barangays and poor barangays. It just occurred to me that many barangays in the at least in the urban areas, okay, ang majority homeowners, property owners, yung composition ng barangay geographically. But in terms of population, the ones that dictate the political outcome are the non-property owners, non-homeowners, and many are essentially illegal settlers or mga nakatira sa village. So, how do you resolve that? Yung bang, is there really a proper representation when most of the votes are from people who don't pay taxes, don't own property, etc.?
Yeah, that has been the trend. And in addition, before that, to address first a while ago what Prof. Hans is saying, we have to revisit the local government code, Cito. It's in the local government code that it's been quite some time that we need to revisit the local government code in terms of looking at the functions of our local government units. Secondly is we intend to look at basically the capacity in terms of looking at the functions. Ano ba yung kaya at saka yung hindi? Pag tinignan mo sa section 17 ng local government code, nandun na yung menu ng mga provisions na dapat na naka-assign sa probinsya, sa munisipyo, sa syudad, at saka sa barangay. Ang tanong, in terms of their financial capacity, do the barangay or has the capacity to perform such functions? And if so, the next question is the technical competence and the capacity of the officials to be able to pursue this. Secondly, to address your question, this is the very phenomena happening in the contested Rembo areas, right? You just imagine, this is very important for the city of Makati simply because these are vote-rich barangays. Whoever gets these barangays would most likely determine and give a head start in terms of being able to propel whose patron is going to win for the next elections. And sad to say, okay, they heavily concentrate at the community level because there's a disparity between, of course, the participation between those who are living in the subdivisions or in the condominium, those who are living in the condominium, wherein they lack basically the participation as such. So dun mo makikita na talagang ang bottleneck really is those people at the community level who are basically aware and direct recipients of the services of the barangay.
Okay. You already, Prof. Eric, you already recommended or suggested in your narrative that we should revisit the local government code, and we should also review the effective function ng mga kagawad or councilors in the barangay, because do we really need lawmakers in the barangay, considering that the administrator, the barangay captain and vice or whatever, is perfectly capable of issuing those things, and City Hall can do it likewise. Now, Hansley, what other things should we do? Revisit local government code, review the functions of barangay councilors. I'm suggesting that we pare down or reduce the commercial control activities or involvement of barangays in the businesses, because that's also a source of animosity and corruption. Yung bang pagbibigay ng barangay clearance, pagkokolekta ng mga fees and dues, etc. Hansley.
One part po na I'm thinking might be relevant in, triggering this big conversation on whether these barangay functions or what kind of policies and changes should be done on specific implementation. It might be a good opportunity for us to talk about whether the mandated barangay councils are actually being used properly, because according to the local government code, and according for that matter to many barangay operating manuals, they nominally have these multiple councils that are or committees that are required by law. Like for example, they have this barangay development council that is expected to comprise the NGOs operating in in their particular area. And there's an expectation that they're supposed to coordinate with regional and city development councils. There's this physical fitness and sports development council. There's this peace and order committee. There's this ecological solid waste management committee. The law supposedly provided for these committees and councils to engender participation and to provide direct democratic engagement between the barangay officials and the residents. The problem there, of course, is that due to the nature, again, as mentioned, of many barangays, community organizing is very, very difficult to do. And hence, the only real presence and the only real places where these councils are properly utilized is, again, in cities where these NGOs or civil society organizations, or in many instances, church-supported cooperatives and movements are present. They can engage because the community is organized, they might be politically aligned, they might be ideologically motivated, and therefore, there's a motivation in making sure that the policies are being debated. But in areas which are either, again, dominated by transient or irregular internal immigrants, if we're looking at areas where, again, sometimes homeowners associations have far more power than the actual barangay, because people contribute more money, they pay more dues, and there's a bigger sense of affinity to it because they actually know each other. We do need to reconcile these things so that we can properly talk about, okay, how is our money being used? How are they being distributed or budgeted? And whether the projects being implemented are of actual any use.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
Okay, well, that's why I entitled my last column, Hungry Ghost in the Philippines. Dahil puro multo itong mga tumatakbo. I only meet them now. Pag no November 1, naglalabasan ang kampanya. Anyway, let's go for a quick break, gentlemen. When we come back, let's carry on with this conversation because I'm hoping that some of our legislators who are more progressive would consider, yeah, maybe we should review what barangays are supposed to be doing and how much money they're supposed to be getting, operating, etc. But also, yung suggestion ni Senator Win Gatchalian, Federation of SKs. Some people have said, we don't really need SKs. Let's talk about that. But first, let's go for a quick break. Okay, welcome back to your program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. Joining us this morning and carrying on with our conversations are Professor Hansley Juliano, Department of Political Science, Ateneo de Manila University, and Professor Eric de Torres, Department of Political Science, University of the East. So let's continue with where we left off and I mentioned that Senator Win Gatchalian is proposing a federation of Sangguniang Kabataan units. And I don't really get the point, but who wants to take the first shot? Eric.
Okay. So I totally agree with you. I cannot really comprehend why do you need a federation for that. Secondly, the way that we intend to analyze the Sangguniang Kabataan, and this is just my personal take, Sito. For me, let us abolish the Sangguniang Kabataan. Really, I mean it's a radical approach, but you know how do you suppose to serve people if even if you expanded the voting age or the age of those who are eligible to run for the SK up to 30 years old as the United Nations Development Program. But if you get to elect an SK of 19, 20 who spent most of their time in school, how are they supposed to basically serve the community if most of their lives are, in school for that matter?
May
Second,
I ask both of you, because you guys are the professors of political science, have you heard of one individual who started from the SK position, Sangguniang Kabataan position, migrated to becoming a councilor, became a barangay chairman, became a city councilor, became a whatever, to kumbaga an example, a model of of success in politics? Meron na ba? Because that's what they keep saying. Oh, that we need the SK, Hansley, to develop future leaders, etc.
I have in principle, I understood what the SK is about. For a time, I wanted to believe that they're trying to help provide the young people with opportunities for engagement. But the challenge you have for the SK in general is that you're competing with so many avenues for learning about leadership and public engagement at this point. What is the value added of SK that, for that matter, for some student organizations are not giving to them? Not to put my students on blast, because I believe I do have students who are running for SK offices in their local areas. And unfortunately, some of these students are missing requirements on me because of that. No, I'm not criticizing them for this, but I do kind of share Professor Eric's concerns that aren't you just forcing schizophrenia on these students functionally, because the kind of political culture they're imbibing in local government, as exposed as they are to the kind of clientelistic patterns we know, do kind of clash with the nominal political values we are supposedly teaching in our universities, and for that matter, other social influences. A lot of the people I know who are doing innovations in local governance at this point did not have an SK background. They probably did not even have a political engagement background at all before they entered politics. But clear as demonstrated in the pandemic, a lot of them demonstrated innovation precisely because they are not built into the machinery. So there is a serious question of why do we still have this? And
It just occurred to me, Hansley, listening to you, why was I even bothering to ask that question? Because if you could postpone the elections how many times, 3 or 4 times, doesn't that say that the positions and functions were not really that important?
Because I get the impression that our political leaders kind of shot themselves in the foot on this as well. They say it's important, but clearly, if this is how they treat it, clearly not. I'm more
Okay.
inclined to believe, as pointed out by Sir Eric, and I began reading the proposal of Senator Gatchalian. I'm kind of beginning to wonder if what they really just want for national federalizing the SK is essentially another ready audience of young impressionable people to turn into apologists for government.
Kumbaga, no, let's gather them where we can basically talk to them. Anyway, Eric,
Yeah.
your last view.
Yeah, last thought. I think beyond what we are doing here in terms of saying, quote unquote, training political leaders is the accountability of the SK. I mean, come on, they will be given a budget. The question is, how do they spend that budget? I mean, going back to what I said a while ago, would it be Liga every now and then? How do they spend their budget? Have you heard basically the SK, for example, look at the mental well-being of their, for example, the youth in their respective areas? Have you heard about SK programs such as, fertility awareness, because there are many, teenage pregnancies in their respective barangays? I mean, come on, let's be rational about it, because I think this proposal of Senator Gatchalian is really a political aspect. It's a political approach in organizing them so as to propel candidacy of whoever it is at the national level. So do we really solve the problem of the youth? Basically, we already have done a National Youth Commission. So I think beyond what we were talking about, political leadership, training ground, how we would make these SK officials accountable. That's just my last take. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess because you are professors, I'm reminded of the paper chase where the professor said, here is a dime, call your mother and tell her there is serious doubt about you ever becoming a lawyer. In my case, ito eraser, burahin na natin yung SK, barangay na yan, etc. Okay, gentlemen, I'm sorry. I guess this is what happens when you're sick and doing your work at the same time. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Hansley, Eric, thank you. And in all seriousness, your points are well taken. At the very least, we should review, we should audit, we should do a performance check on all barangays from the time the elections were suspended up to date. Are we getting our money's worth, or should we just pack it all and chuck it in the warehouse? Thank you very much. Okay, that's Professor Hansley Juliano and Professor Eric de Torres, and a very interesting conversation. Let's now go to our blessing for the week. It's not a prayer, but it's a reminder. A wise man will make more opportunities than he finds, because many times in life we are looking for opportunities when we could actually create those opportunities for us. So please be reminded, Gab, can you flash that back there? A wise man will create more opportunities than he finds. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Cito Beltran thanking you. Please keep it here on One News.